Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaber, and I'm here today with Matt Hartel, a sales engineer at ITH, and Gabe Hyde, a biz dev director at ITH. And up front, I'm going to tell everyone we're in the similar industries. We met through a mutual podcast that I did, and we decided to have this podcast to talk about what's going on in our industry. So, how you guys doing today?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, and I'm in San Francisco. Gabe is in Atlanta. Matt's in a suburb of Philadelphia. So we're kind of like a triangle here doing this. So we'll start with, COVID. I mean, that's the big thing on everyone's mind right now. So in your guys' opinion, how did COVID affect the fulfillment process, especially when it comes to fulfillment offshore for a lot of your companies or your customers?
Yeah, so this was a really interesting kind of out of left field problem for a lot of us. I mean, I think it was a problem for every company, regardless of whether it was a remote offshore company or an onshore company. But that we were speaking about this off camera here about just the resiliency of many people. In our case, we're both resourcing from Asia. The resiliency of the people there is in some ways much higher than it is in Western culture. They're more used to slow lines and more people, general higher a shortage of resources, but they are very resilient and adapt very, very well to rapid change in their working situations, into challenges that they're facing as a team. We had our team was forced to work from home for a number of weeks, and they took it very well. And actually, productivity in some ways went up rather than going down. And so we saw productivity go up, and we saw them adapt well to it. Internet issues were resolved rather quickly. Their infrastructure was actually better than we had anticipated, especially from their home internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just seen really, really positive results from them adapting to a work from home, a hybrid situation.
And I think we saw similar things. I mean, our employees were also, used to it. It's more common in other parts of the world. Did you guys notice, one of the things we noticed was more people were reaching out to us, about remote work. At first, there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh yeah, we're not quite ready for that," and all of us like, "Oh, we're ready." What's your advice? Did you guys notice that?
Yeah, I noticed it pretty quickly, Mark. Probably I noticed it first from, just people within my friend group in Atlanta that, journey with me for the last, 5 years on what it looks like to work remote and some of the challenges that I deal with from, just not being able to be together with the team. And so, I mean, even despite all that preparation, I mean, it was still difficult to have basically no outside human interaction for a bit. And I'll just, speak to the last question a little bit as well. That's such an important part of our team. It's extremely important for them to feel like, they're working side by side with their teammates. And so I think going into that first week or so of the team working remote, we were actually concerned about what that would look like in terms of culture. And if the team could stay motivated, not being side by side with their teammates. And so, just like for most people, we've known the challenges of this, but we've always tried to look at the positive and encouraging things that have come from it. And we definitely feel like both from a personal standpoint and from our team standpoint that the team is more resilient. And and yeah, we definitely feel like we're more equipped remote workers at this point.
Yes, I agree. And it's funny, I talked to a lot of CEOs and CIOs, and they all said, something very similar is that, I know Atlanta has traffic, San Francisco definitely has traffic, and I've been in Philadelphia enough to know that they do get traffic too. And people got back an hour and a half to 2 hours of their day, right? Which actually, I think that was part of the reason that we saw the uptick in productivity in the U.S. And I think that also occurred in other parts of the world. Would you guys agree?
I mean, certainly the case in Atlanta.
Mhm.
It depends on what you're filling that extra
Right.
hour and a half, 2 hours a day with. I think I've definitely felt at times that it's more challenging. I've worked a lot longer
Mhm.
than I otherwise would have because there's not this gap of time.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. I know in Atlanta, some things have opened, but even now, after several weeks of restaurants and stores starting to open back up, there's still hardly any traffic on the road.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're starting to notice a little bit here. And the other thing that you guys know, as long as we're talking about the first couple of weeks, did you guys feel like you were Zoom's technical support for the first couple of weeks? I don't know how many people that know that I have a technical background that needed help with Zoom.
Hmm.
yeah, I guess the funniest part of that was giving Zoom instructions to your grandparents and to your family.
Yeah. For sure, yeah, that was always a challenge, and they would, we would say just it was so easy, but they would make it complicated, and that was always hard to like. It's really just a click. You don't really have to do a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, I can
But
tell
it's
you that
fun.
I
Yeah.
actually got my mother hooked up, my 90-year-old mother hooked up on
Oh,
Zoom.
good for you. Yeah.
One of my brothers is still a little shaky. But as I joke with people, he's still got a VCR, and the clock is still flashing 12.
Yep. Right.
He hasn't mastered the DVR yet. Wow. So, one of the things that we get asked for a lot, and I'm sure you guys do too, is the best practices of outsourcing. I think that's one of the things that companies like ours bring to the table. Is a lot of companies have thought about remote, but they're afraid to jump in, and all of a sudden they had to. So, did you guys run into that a lot? And what do you tell them?
Yeah, I think we largely had a process in place before the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would say that having a process is the key thing about outsourcing and being ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
At least from the provider that you choose, right? That you're very clear on a cadence that everyone has. Our cadence is weekly meetings. Single point of contact.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that everybody is aware of some cultural differences and ultimately time differences. Those are things that prove to be sometimes larger challenges than most people expect. But I think setting expectations early, making sure everybody understands the pros and cons, because there are cons, but there are certainly way more pros uh, to outsourcing. That if everybody's aware of them in the beginning, it can be really motivating to kind of stick through the cons, right? If you can really list all the pros and then you weigh them against the cons, a lot of times people will say, wow, that's something I didn't realize there were this many pros to it. I'm willing to kind of endure some of the downsides to it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think you said the key thing was the single point of contact. I think that is so important. I think a lot of people got burned by outsourcing to a company halfway around the world, and just kind of throwing stuff, over the fence to them. And it just doesn't work that way. I mean, it doesn't work if you're in the same office, really, when you think about it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And
yeah,
that's a
and
great point, Mark. I mean, there's a lot of things that we wouldn't violate in our own workplace as far as process that we sometimes violate without outsourcing. So
Mhm.
it's very important that you just keep your process and adhere to that, even though there's some time differences and global considerations in mind here.
Yeah. And Gabe, you had a comment?
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I would agree with all of Matt's points there. And Mark, you and I have talked before about what that looks like to have a single point of contact and some of the bad experiences that, quite frankly, we spend a lot of our time in that initial part of the relationship reshaping and reframing what an offshore outsourcing relationship could look like based on
Mhm.
whatever past experience our clients have dealt with. And I would say, I always try to really put a positive spin on this, where even before the pandemic, just realizing the opportunity that you essentially have the resources of the entire world at your fingertips, from the blessing of really good software.
Mhm.
And so, it's, I would say that it's difficult to draw a real line in the sand at this point, for needs that could be met in other places, that you're struggling to meet there in your office, or within, um, you know, kind of the in-house model of um,
Mhm.
running a development shop. And so, it's, for me, again, process, setting up really solid collaboration protocol. And a third point I would add there is, once you go through the process of finding that team, a real best practice is to treat that team like they're truly your teammates,
Right.
not that they're contractors, but honor them in a way that you would your full-time teammates, your
Mhm.
full-time employees. And um, they certainly appreciate it. And I know that both of our teams really give their all on these projects, and they really care about the outcomes. And so, to have a client reciprocate that, it's always a really great feeling.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people, and I've talked to a fair number that, you know, told me 6 months ago, if someone said they were going to do outsourcing, they said, there's no way. There's no way. It's too important. And now that they've seen remote work, they're like, you know what? This has some merit. I think I'm gonna look into this more seriously. And especially when you start to look at, you know, the salaries in some of these big cities. I know San Francisco, they're astronomical. I know Atlanta is probably just a little bit below, and Philadelphia is probably similar, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. We're receiving a lot of great San Francisco talent here in Atlanta.
Oh,
So,
you are?
yeah. So, it's true. I mean, I just think, as Matt mentioned earlier, it's not always the best option, but I think having it as an option, is a good thing. And we've certainly felt that people that were once opposed to the idea altogether are now more open to it. And
Yeah.
so it's, really our jobs on the, for who's on this call, to be able to guide clients through what that could look like, and the advantages they could see from it.
Yes. So, and you know, the other thing I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed it too. I mean, we're on this call together. We kind of compete with each other, but not really, right? Is the collaboration. Have you guys? I mean, we've worked with a couple other companies like yourself that, you know, we have specific expertise and they have specific expertise, and a lot of times a customer will need both. So we reach out to each other. Have you guys been doing a lot of that?
Yeah, I mean, we for instance, so we just had one of our larger clients come in with a Drupal need,
Hmm.
and we didn't have the ability to fulfill that. We don't have a full-time Drupal team, and so we looked in our referral network and we said, well, there's a partner of like mind and like quality, that's relatively in the same country,
Hmm.
that we just referred, and we actually, what we do for them is we do the project management,
Hmm.
but they provide the resources. So there's different ways of keeping that single point of contact together, uh, and not jeopardizing the relationship, continuing to manage the relationship, but at the same time finding the right resource and just bringing in that resource from another team and making them a part of our team. So that's some of the ways that we do it, and then wholesale, just referral of technologies that we can't do, and so
Hmm.
we'll just refer projects all together wholesale, to someone in our network. But it really does go back to that trust, knowing, building those relationships with other people. We have, Mark is one of our fellow BD folks in the
Hmm.
industry, and when we have others that we keep regular contact with, and we enjoy it. We have similar challenges, but we also have similar successes that we like to share.
Hmm. Yeah, so we've noticed that too here for sure. And it really does help. I mean, it really does help to have a network of companies that you can draw on to get the talent that you need, because there is a lot of talent out there all over the world. like as we've talked about, I mean, I've given away my age, but I used to be a COBOL programmer. So there's some demand in that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we would all agree that at the end of the day, it's about helping clients. And there are some times where, I mean, your team just can't do it all.
Right.
So, but you still have that desire to help.
Mhm.
And, you know, from a business development standpoint, what better way to build trust than
Mhm.
to, you know, take a problem that you can't solve yourself, but
Mhm.
you can help a client figure out how to solve that problem. And
Mhm.
I mean, just like, you know, to answer your question, most of the time that comes with, you know, us really getting connected to other people in the same space.
Right.
We kind of know and trust their process and know that they're going to take good care of our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as kind of like, building a house. A general contractor probably has people on his staff that can do probably 60% of it, but he might have to farm out the electrical and the plumbing and things like that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to finish on one other topic, and I don't know if you guys noticed this. I noticed it first when the virus first hit and we went into stay in place. A lot of companies were in a wait and see mode. It's like, oh my God, we might have to look at this, but we don't know if we're going to be in business 2 months from now or a year from now. And I've noticed lately that they're starting to feel a lot more comfortable with, the way things are going. And so, things are starting to pick up. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah. Mark, I've got to say that last week
Mhm.
was probably one of the busiest in terms of new projects and new conversations. Some were, you know, things that I made an effort to drum up. Others just came in, but it's probably one of the busiest weeks ever for me
Mhm.
at ITH, and certainly encouraging. And I think um, more than anything else, I think that this pandemic has had a different effect on different industries, right? And so when our clients are primarily, you know, digital agencies, and then we have other direct clients as well, but agencies are spread across a lot of different industries. And so yeah, so it was like, you know, some industries are picking back up, and it's pretty clear to see that there's some light at the end of the tunnel for them. And so they're going to start investing into building some new tech or doing some things that they have put off. Um, Other industries are still waiting to come around. And
Mhm.
but yeah, I think in general the outlook from our last few weeks has been positive.
Yeah, and then so Matt, if Gabe's starting to pick up, you're usually follow him by about a week or two, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're always working together. I'm always you know, pinch hitting with him and jumping in there and closing deals. And so it's a lot of fun. I mean, I would say it's very interesting to see the solutions that that people have come up with.
Mhm.
You know, most companies have realized that survival is dependent on them being agile and willing to change and adjust. We have some clients that do some telemedicine. You know, they're looking at how do we get that rolling, and how do we make that marketable, and how do we make that profitable. um, we've got some people that provide care for seniors.
Mhm.
They're doing that, and that's become a different industry. So how have we you know helped people adapt quickly? Because outsourced projects, we sell resources, right? So we sell scale. And a lot of times, if you have one or two developers in house, you can't build a product
Mhm.
in 4 weeks, in 3 months. It's going to take you 6 months, a year. And so we help you do that more rapidly so that you can change and that you can survive and that you can meet the needs of your clients. So, from an outsourcing standpoint, if you can clearly define your needs, and you can define your path, outsourcing can be a great way to scale quickly and to adapt quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with you. One comment I get to, and we'll finish on this, is a lot of people say, "Aren't you taking jobs away from Americans?" And I'm like, you're really not. I've worked with enough companies in Silicon Valley that really the outsourcing is what it does is it gets the company up and going to a point where then they actually end up hiring more American employees eventually. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think of it outsourcing as a separate thing from, I mean, a broader topic than offshore outsourcing.
Right.
I think outsourcing is just in general a lean model, and then offshore, you know, comes with some challenges. But yeah, I mean, I mean, our best clients are geared towards growth.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make a great case for why you would seek to use a team like ours if you're not driven for growth.
Right.
That's not the goal. So, and there are plenty of people out there like that are content with kind of maintaining a more stable environment. But yeah, I mean, if you're geared towards growth, I think at some point you're going to get to a place where more jobs are created.
Yeah, it's inevitable. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, this has been really fascinating. I want to thank you for your time today. Enjoy your East Coast weather. I was there last week. I know how hot it is.
Humid.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure we'll be in touch. So have a great night.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.